Good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure having you again, Marguerite, in this second season. And this season is all about organizational applications of transactional analysis. And it's always great to have you, Marguerite. And today I have to congratulate you for your new acquired TSTA. And
Thank you,
yeah,
Sharaf.
and it's been a long journey. You deserve it a long time ago. So, do you like to talk about it a little bit before moving forward with our episode today?
I don't want to spend too much time on it because we've got a fabulous topic. So, thank you for the congratulations. And I am now in process towards losing the provisional title and becoming a training and supervising transactional analyst, which is very exciting for me. And it does mean from now on, I can embark on training and supervising people towards their CTA, which is the first set of exams, and I'm delighted. So enough of that.
It seems like
Yeah.
a long journey understanding transactional analysis and what it took from you actually to reach out there, even after you got your certificates in organizational psychology and already you've been there training, consulting, working with organizations. And actually you're still in this deliberate practice, putting
Mm.
on hours and efforts in transactional analysis. It seems to me like it's a great passion, and how you bring it on,
Oh,
and learning from you is actually, really manifests that. So I have
oh,
to
good.
acknowledge and really have great gratitude of being one of those that you in a way that will I may start this journey. so so
Oh,
so I
good.
hope
Oh, I hope so.
I hope you continue to be my teacher. And yeah, thank
I
you.
would be delighted, Sharaf. I hope you do. It is a really beautiful process, and I'm very my enthusiasm comes from my love of transactional analysis is because of it, how dynamic it is, and it's just it's extraordinary the way it can be applied dynamically in different ways and shapes and forms and way of thinking, and it gives you these deep insights into what's going on here within oneself and between yourself and others. So I really am very passionate about it and would love to see you do the CTA exams. So yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being my teacher in the TA 101. And it's how you are introducing the
Pleasure.
concepts. And where we are going to start today is from the ego states and its organizational applications.
Mm-hmm.
And I will have actually to start here from a place of a student who took, the ego states in two contexts. One of them was a learner in a classroom that was actually full of leaders, and a teacher was teaching us, please use the adult to adult communication and put it out
Yeah.
as most of your communications as leaders with your subordinates, because this is the correct way of handling adults at work and making them more accountable, creating more collaboration, and making sure that you are respecting people in front of you. And this is how you should show respect to others. And then when actually contemplating and trying to learn do this actually in the real life, it wasn't that easy. Sometimes I couldn't hold the adult to adult state. Yeah, and there is a percentage of time
Yes.
where I have to jump here and there. And actually when I started TA 101, I got it from a different perspective. So I'd like to hear it fresh from you, and
Mm.
actually,
All right.
yeah, hear you're saying about this. This is where I want. This is where we want to start today. So
Okay, lovely. Great place to start. Thanks, Sharaf. So, for possibly for those who are watching and listening in, let's just quickly talk a little bit about ego states themselves. So, in transactional analysis, we talk about these ways of being, we could call it, and they are the parent, the adult, and the child ego states. We all have a parent, a child, and an adult ego state within. I'm keeping this as short and as quick as possible and as simple as I can for now. Um, and sometimes you will see in organizations, let's keep it there as well, that people you're dealing with might be in a parental style of communication. Okay, so the way they are functioning, it seems as if they're in parent mode. And they might be in controlling parent mode, critical parent mode, or they might be nurturing. So we call that nurturing parent or controlling parent. Sometimes in the workplace, you'll see someone in the child ego state. They might be playful. Think about maybe the Friday afternoon after work get-togethers where perhaps people have too much to drink and the child comes out in them then. But also during work, you might have somebody who is in the child and is very creative and enthusiastic and excited about what they do. There are other aspects of the child, though, which we call adapted child. And when we're in our adapted child, we might be rebellious or withdrawn or compliant. And then, of course, we have the adult ego state. Thanks for sharing the slide. The adult are the behaviors, thoughts, feelings in direct response to the here and now. So when we are in the adult, we have this presence of mind and we are aware of the here and now. Okay, as the slide says, parent behaviors, thoughts, feelings copied from our parents, child behaviors, thoughts, feelings replayed from childhood. So when we interact with other, which is then the transactional analysis that we can do with that. And as you say, the way TA is taught and used in organizational settings, I have come across where people are advised that the best interaction is adult to adult, and that's how you must keep it. And it sounds like the simplest and easiest solution. And then, as you said, sometimes when we're in an interaction, we might try to interact in adult and it doesn't work. And we don't know why. And what is not coming across is how transactions are much more dynamic than that. And there are many, many options to choose from, not just adult to adult. And when we are engaging with someone in the workplace, the more we know and the more we practice using all the choices we have of a transaction, the better we will be at communicating and understanding what is coming our way. Okay. So, do you want to show, I think, another slide, the transactional, which ones did I give you? The next one?
The next one after this one?
Yeah. Let's see. Contaminations. Let's talk about that. Symbiosis. Contaminations. Let me go back one. So sometimes in the workplace, you will notice that somebody seems to be talking in adult, but what they're saying doesn't really add up. So you might have somebody who's expressing an absolute fear of speaking up for themselves. And they will say to you as if it's true, no, but I cannot speak to management about this. They won't listen to me. That's called an ego state, adult contamination, and it's a child fear, and it seems real. So there's something about us being able to identify when somebody is actually in their parent or child and not in their adult. And understanding this would help. So if I see that, I can help the person by decontaminating their adult and go, is that belief really true in the here and now? And help almost in a mentoring process to get them to move out of their child or parent contamination and into the adult for adult thinking. Okay, so first of all, it's working with my own internal process. And my internal process, I can engage the adult within me and then go and transact with others, all right? And then with that, let's get into the transactions. As I said, there are many options. So we can have complementary transactions, and that is simply when I get what I'm expecting from in you. So if I start out like we have started out this morning, we're in adult to adult pretty much, and you're asking me questions and I'm answering your questions, and it's going smoothly because you are receiving from me what you expect. So I'm looking at types of transactions, as you can see on the slide. The complementary transaction is when you get what you expect. So I might also transact with you child to child even. And I might say, come, We've got a project to do. Let's do this. What ideas do you have? Give me some ideas. Let's play with this. And I hook the child in you, and I draw the creative side of you out, and you start playing as well. And suddenly we have invented something magnificent, like we invented the internet. So there is, so you see in that transaction, it's complementary. I get what I expect. Now imagine if when when the internet was being invented, someone said, I've got a brilliant idea. And they get from the person a non-complementary, the second one on the slide. They get, no, we can't do that. That's not in the policy. That would be me going child to child and getting a parent response. So it's non-complementary. I didn't get what I expected. So even with those two, Sharaf, and you can take the slide away again, because I don't want to confuse with all the other types of transactions at this point. But even with those two transactions types, I have options. I can complement a transaction if I want to, or I can not complement it. I can, what we say is crossed transaction, where I don't give what the person is looking for. So sometimes in organizations, for instance, I might get into something called a symbiosis, where I'm the boss, I'm in charge, I will be the adult, I will be the parent, and I will tell you what to do, and I will follow up all the time with you, and I don't want you to think, I just want you to follow instruction, right? And my subordinate, my reportee, takes on and accepts that, oh, in that case, they're going to be in child, and I'm going to do all the parenting and adulting, and they will be in child. And our transactions then will be parent to child, mostly, adult to child. And there's a setup there where we're supposed to remain that way forever. Now, what if you don't want to remain that way? What if you're tired of being treated like a child? In the organizational setting, I don't want to be a child anymore. I've got good ideas. I'm good at thinking. I'm good at managing myself on my own. I don't want to be micromanaged anymore. You do not have to complement this transaction anymore. You can choose not to complement it. And you can choose to communicate from a different ego state. Another example I could give you might be where when I've had an employee who was excessively absent and late for work, ongoing. And her manager would reprimand her in controlling parent style. Why are you late? Why didn't you come in? Get on with it. Now you've got to catch up with your work. I'm very angry with you. Now I have to follow up with you because you are behind. And I could see that that transaction remained where he was parenting, and she knew, not consciously, but I can remain in child. I don't have to come early. He's just going to yell at me a bit, and then he's going to check all my work for me. I don't have to think. I don't have to come to work on time, and I don't have to stop being absent when I feel like it. He then went into a process with her where he switched to nurturing parent, and he nurtured her. And he said, I'm really worried. What is going on with you? Why are you always absent? Do you need help? This didn't change anything. She continued to remain in her child ego state and not do her work, arrive late, etc., etc. So we discussed this, and he said, I don't know what else to do. So, and I suggested to him that he actually switch then to something else and try different ego states until he discovers what works. If somebody is in child and saying, I can't help myself, I don't know what to do, you might want to move from nurturing into controlling, but a positive controlling parent that says, you know what, if you keep going this way, you're going to lose your job. And I'm feeling really annoyed about having to follow up with you all the time. So you're not complementing that transaction anymore. You're not nurturing anymore. It's still in parent, but it's controlling instead of nurturing. And then you might be able to shift to adult. What we learn with transactions is that shifting to adult, sometimes you then try and shift to adult and it doesn't work. The person tries to draw you back into some other ego state. You can either say, I'm not going there. I want to stay in adult. Voice it. Or you can say, all right, let me try a bit more nurturing. or something else, maybe a bit of natural child, happy child for a bit. See what works. I had another example in the Air Force environment where a young student pilot was being taught to fly, and his instructor said to me, he's tried everything. He's tried the obvious military way, which is to yell and shout and shoot commands at him. And this guy just lost it. Every time they did a sortie, they were up in the air, and the guy could not take controls and do anything right. He tried controlling parent, it didn't work. He tried nurturing parent, it didn't work. I said to him, you haven't tried child. And he went, child? You've got to be kidding. In the cockpit, in a jet, we can't do this. And I said to him, what do you love doing? He said, my favorite, I love to fly. And I said, okay, and why do you love to fly? And he went into his child ego state. He said, it's fun, it's exciting, it's amazing. Use that. And he did it. And I thought that was so beautiful of him for actually trying it. And he went into the air with his student, and first they played. And he said, let's just play a bit. Let me show you what you can do when you're a pilot. Barrel rolls and G-forces and nutty things. And then he said to him, now, take over. Let's do your sortie. And the guy just took over because a different ego state had been engaged, a little bit for a while of child to child, and suddenly he actually felt safer, better, and it worked. And I got this beautiful feedback from the instructor afterwards to say, I can't believe it, it worked. So that's the dynamic nature.
Yeah, so I'm just in a place of wonder, or maybe I'm a little bit puzzled, here, that in a way, when we are adults and we are in a place where we want to complement each other, it's not about, and when I'm present in my adult, in my adult state and being present and connected, why not integrate my child playful state and also integrate my culture, my history, my teachings that I already acquired from my parents, and and maybe consider this as part of being me.
Nice.
Yeah. So I find it very difficult for me, actually,
Yeah.
to stick to a one plan. This
Okay.
I'm this kind of party pooper. Whenever something, I'm this person who always disrupts others. The I try to enter a new energy. Is this considered a playful mode? Is it considered, or is it an adult mode? When it comes to, disrupting how people think, maybe challenging the norms, accepting,
Yeah.
to challenge, to stretch, to put it in a playful setup, things like that. Is it considered, in the transactional analysis perspective, parenting, or going in a child state? Is it considered, or can parts of it be considered part of being adult, and this is what is needed here?
I love it, Mohammed. Sharaf, you used the word integrate.
Yeah.
And there are different pieces of theory around that. One is called integrating adult, and Eric Byrne, many years ago, referred to it as the integrated adult. And that really is, to put it as simply as possible, using the positive aspects of each ego state. So that, and sometimes it's described as possibly using the controlling parent through the adult. So almost filtering it through the adult, so that you do not bring into this conversation the negative elements of controlling parent, but only the positive ones. Yeah. So what are the positive aspects of a controlling parent ego state? That is, that the controlling parent provides us with structure, understanding and knowing the rules, being allowed to adhere to the rules. The child as well, positive child would be filtering through the adult positive child behavior in the workplace. So instead of being disruptive in your child ego state, you can be creative when it's appropriate. So the adult does that for you. The adult will go, what works in this instance? Does controlling parent make sense at the moment? So often with controlling parent in particular, we give the difference between a controlling parent and a critical parent. Critical parent is that negative aspect of the controlling parent, and there is no space for that in any communication, that we should aim not to use critical parent. Controlling, we can say, as long as it's filtered through our adult within, then it is useful sometimes because it provides us with structure in our lives. And as a team member, as somebody in an organization, I need to accept that structure, know the policy, know the procedures, understand how it works. That's where controlling parent resides, if it's the positive aspects of it. In the workplace, the positive aspects of child would be our creative, intuitive. The negative aspects of child would be things like rebellious, withdrawn, and submissive. So you would want to say, that isn't appropriate. What is? But I love what you said, Sharaf, about not leaving parts of yourself outside of the room, but integrating all parts of myself and being able to recognize them. So when I'm in the room with my adult, my parent, and my child, watch myself and go, what is happening now? Where am I shifting to? And is that going to work right now? And choose then what will work. And your adult, I have on the slide there, you could describe the adult as the executive of your personality. So as the executive, the adult is working internally, like this little engine inside going, what shall I do now? What should I deploy? Should I deploy child, parent, nurturing, control? What do I use? What will work in this instance? And choose it. And sometimes, as I said before, if somebody comes to you in the workplace with a creative idea, you, before putting them down because, oh no, it's not in policy, before perhaps making them feel stupid for having come with this idea, which is controlling parent ego state stuff, you might want to stop for a moment and think, wow, look at that. Beautiful use of child, beautiful expression of child in the workplace. Let's play with that for a while. And go with it and see what happens. And I must say, for me, especially the child, when you are encouraging that child creativity in the workplace, the happiness, the joy, the commitment, the intimacy that develops is just spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to encourage the use of it. But yeah, always with your adult in the background, watching, looking after the situation, switching to another ego state when it's appropriate, when time is up, perhaps we can't do this anymore, when an idea just doesn't work, switching.
Yeah. And this actually makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, this one, how you are actually articulating it is making a lot of sense, because actually in some cases, I believe that it's fully an adult response to actually submit in a discussion, that even the submissive behavior, sometimes it's truly adult in some situations where it is going nowhere, when there is no when it's an argument, when it's something that will not evolve into a conclusion, when it is so heated up, and actually we need to actually take an adult choice to set a boundary here. So in a way, in the same discussion, we can actually ask that we are going to end this discussion, this is sort of submission, and go to a control, that's the controlling parent, or the maybe after we cool down, or maybe after we have some new ideas or a fresh perspective to the things, we need to just disconnect now and re-engage again, and go back to the adult state, and agree on a date, and we re-engage again in this discussion to continue talking together. So yeah, So in a way, complementing, things and actually moving between the ego states is and taking the control from the adult place as an integrating adult really makes sense in this context. I cannot always.
Yeah.
be,
I think
be
I gave an example in our 101 when I was teaching this, about someone who described how she had this tendency with authority to go into her child ego state, her submissive child, and her way of communicating with authority was shoulders up, wringing her hands, high squeaky voice. So she would walk into the boss's office in that state. And what that invites in the other one is, please will you nurture me? Please will you look after me? I'm just a child. And her boss, this one particular boss, refused to do so. So he wouldn't compliment that transaction. He could see, you want nurturing parent, but I don't want to do that because I know that you can do better than this and you're not a child. And he put it on the table. He said out loud, I'm not going to deal with this. Please leave the office, and when you can come back and you're adult, come back. So he used a controlling parent communication style to throw her out the office. But what he was doing was in the here and now, related directly to the behavior. Short, sweet, not criticizing, not mocking her for being an inner child. None of that stuff. Just a healthy, controlling parent. I'm not doing this. You leave, come back when you're in your adult. And she tells the story because of what it did for her, that she then looked at herself and went, oh, do I really do this? I don't want to be that way. That submissive child came in, sat down with him, adult to adult, and it changed the way she interacted. So I thought that was a lovely use of the dynamic of, I'm not complimenting the transaction, giving you non-complimentary, and then I'm asking you to come back when you're ready to engage with me in the transaction that I'm looking for from you.
Okay, that's amazing, and I believe that continuing to talk about examples like this is really, important for us to learn more about behaviors and what we call here, the dynamics that are actually that we are evolving, and how we are bringing ourselves and showing up in different situations. And just, I believe that before putting ourselves in a place where we are conflicting or actually doing things that we afterwards regret, it's just a matter of reflecting for some seconds, maybe being more present, reflecting, and strategizing before acting. Is it? And how do you work on this with the organizations in an organization context? Besides understanding these concepts, how can this turns into actions and behaviors? What's the regular process here?
Sharaf, are you asking me what I do in organizations with this?
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
how I
yes.
bring it in, and
Yes, and it's important also to talk about maybe how you support organizations. Actually, for if I'm an organization leader and I want to be more reflective and actually have better dynamics with my team members and my peers, my leadership, and look at how I actually work with my conflicts and what kind of dynamics and symbiosis I'm creating around me to maybe
lovely.
improve things around.
Yeah,
So what kind of support will be there? What kind of process will
yeah.
they engage in with a traditional transactional analysis?
Yeah.
Kind of
Well,
work.
yeah, what I normally do is design a process that's relevant for the organization. So first I would spend some time understanding the organization, understanding what they're asking from me. And then very often I will teach the ego state theory, I will teach the transactions, and then in workshops, give case studies, get time for practice and time for reflection. give teams what we call an egogram, an ego state questionnaire, so that they can identify what is my dominant ego state, what do I tend to go into when I'm under stress, how can I change that, what can I do differently. I have a lovely thing called a group imago, which was developed by Mohan Raj in India, and that gives us a picture of the ego states of the group, and where our dominant ones are they functional, what can we increase, what can we decrease. So there's a lot of, first of all, understanding the ego states, understanding my own ego state makeup, and then what can I do with this, how can I change what I want to change. And then it's where the opportunity is for us to go out back into the workplace, utilize what you have discovered, try different things, come back into work with me and describe, this is what happened, it's not working, what can I do better. I mean, I do this all the time. So when something happens and it did not go well, I sit down with pen and paper, I draw my ego states perhaps, and I go, what was the transaction? What happened? What ego state was I in, and where did I go? And where did I want to be? And I plan it. I think about, how do I want now to deal with it? And then go back in and then do the work. We don't always get it right all of the time. So that reflection process for me is essential, and that's where my growing and changing happens, and the ability and the understanding that we don't get it right all the time. So I can go back in and go back to that person and say, that interaction really didn't go the way I wanted or the way I planned. Let's sit down and work out where to from here. You know.
Oh.
And the more we practice it and the more we reflect, I really want to encourage, especially managers, to spend some time at the end of a day or the beginning of a day thinking about my team. Who am I going to work with today? What type of transactions do we tend to get into? Are we in a symbiotic relationship? Do I want to change that? What kind of conversation do I want to have with this person today? That kind of reflection on your team before you dive into the everyday, troubleshooting work that we do, to really think about it and set an intention for my team and use the ego states and transaction model, the contracting, which we've discussed before, the recontracting for, I've been communicating in this way up till now, I want to change it. Can you work with me to change the way we interact in the workplace?
Oh.
So that is the kind of work that I would do with a team. And it's with leaders or with I prefer mostly to work with the whole team. So, and often I'm asked to work with team members without the leadership. And
Okay.
I try to encourage leadership to come in. The more leaders that are present in the process, the better. So that the contract can be formed in that process. Yeah.
And normally, such work, do you have maybe in numbers or case studies that maybe return on investment? What comes in? This is all non-tangible when we talk about organization dynamics, and I believe it's a lengthy and I may tell psychologically or the draining process. It's really the learning itself is really painful when you go through this kind of self-reflection, putting a map, designing how you will communicate, and this is effortful. It's really it takes a lot of energy. So what is the payoff?
I'm glad you asked about that, Sharaf. It's quite a difficult thing to give statistical feedback on, because it is qualitative. And there is a lot of research, transactional analysis research that is done. And there is the Transactional Analysis Journal, which is published every month, in which research papers are published. And where you can discover case studies, you can read about how this is applied in organizations, what the results are of when it is applied. To an extent, it is quantifiable, but it's a difficult one because you don't have perfect experimental conditions. So you can attribute before and after the transactional analysis workshop, this is what changed, and this is the result in productivity, this is the result in motivation, this is the result in commitment. So studies are done in that respect. I do want to say, though, that I think for me the most important aspect of this is not always to try and link it to the bottom line, not always to try and link it to productivity only. We're not in organizations only to be productive. We are in, and I mean bottom line productive, we are in organizations as human beings to be human beings. And our goal in organizations and the organization's goals should be not always only around the bottom line. The bottom line is there to feed all of us, and that's essential, so don't lose sight of that. And while we are working, our emotional well-being is extremely important. Eventually, everything affects the bottom line, of course. But to focus on what is, as my role in this organization, if I'm the founder of this organization, do I want desperately unwell, psychologically unwell people who are producing millions for me? Is that all I want? Or is it bigger and broader and more than that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I may tell that not doing it or not actually going through this process makes us lose a lot. And it's not only about the revenue that comes in, it's about what I'm saving when I'm doing this. I believe I'm saving my relationships, I'm saving my organization health, I'm saving my
Yeah.
psychological health, I'm avoiding unnecessary work stress and conflicts and what we call it entropy. That's that is already, this is saved money, saved energy, saved time, saved to rehire somebody after, or hire somebody instead of somebody who's departing, because you are really, the symbiosis state is not working anymore, or the state that you're in not reflecting will make you actually, or not going through such processes, deep processes, will actually make us lose more than the monetary winning of actually just merely changing the organization strategy in numbers and putting focus on which products and which services, where organizations are really valuing their people and valuing their relational dynamics, valuing their main assets are their people. Actually, this is the way to honor them. It's an investment of the well-being of the
It is.
humanity,
Yeah.
not only the
Yeah.
organization
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah. And with social media now being what it is, organizations get a reputation very quickly, and they get the reputation from the employees who are inside of them. And I know organizations where I don't know anything about them. I've never worked in them, but I have heard by the grapevine, oh, very successful organization, but you don't want to work there. It's
Yeah,
terrible in there. And for me, that's is that really what it's about? That just because we're successful, then that's it? What about, and I love the idea with organizations saying, we want to be the preferred employer.
yeah,
You know, I want to be the preferred employer. When people see that I'm recruiting, they go, I want to work there because I've heard other people speak about this organization. It is healthy. It is a life-giving organization. And that's what you're looking for in this work. Just one more thing, Sharaf, about when you said, oh, it's gone. Darn it, I lost it. But yeah, I think healthy, life-giving, if that's what we're about in the organization, it goes beyond the bottom line. That's what we're looking for. Oh, it was
yeah,
about saving time, and we're out of time. A
yeah.
lot of times I'm told we don't have time for this. I've just got to get the job done. Controlling parent, nothing else, don't have time for this. And I always go, yeah. And then you lose the person, and then you have to make the time to find somebody new, and 6 months for them to settle into the organization, for you to then lose them again. You've got
Yeah.
time for that? I think you've got time for this, you know?
I may have a very strong, relationship when it comes to when you told me about the pilots and the officer who was training him, or
Yeah.
the general. And actually looking at our resources as we look to, this is my pilot. the investments that is done in this talent, and actually there is no way the army is going to give up a fighter who actually knows how to fly, that after this training investment
Yeah.
putting in him. So it's very relevant to see what can make his training better to achieve our organization goals, which is the army goals, and make this fighter this fighter pilot actually get trained. They went the extra mile because of how they perceive him as an asset. It's not easy to replace pilots in the armies.
Mm. Yeah.
They are always
Yeah.
very limited in number,
Yeah.
very hugely invested in. So if we look at
Exactly.
our employees and actually our people in the organization, that they are this kind of assets, their family, I believe that it's when this sort of investment and actually looking at it, it's really will make a lot of sense.
Mm. Yeah, and I would say they're more than an investment, and they're more than an asset. They're human beings, and
Yeah,
and that's what matters. And to spend the time on them as human beings, that we are human beings, and we bring everything with us into the workplace, and to acknowledge that, respect it, and work with it, instead of almost seeing, if I see you as an asset, I might not treat you so well, but if I see you as a human being, and yes, of course, I am investing in you, um, just to keep them both, to hold that space for both. This is a human being, and he's an asset, yes, and this is why I'm going to invest my energy and my humanness in working with that person.
yeah, yeah. That's very true. Thank you, Marguerite, for today. It was really an amazing journey through the
Thanks,
ego
Sarah.
states. So, what could be our next episode about? Yeah.
Perhaps we can talk about, okay, if we continue the discussion around ego states and transactions, and something I could spend a little bit more time on is this notion of symbiosis, and in particular in the workplace. I'd like to talk about that. There's something called the symbiotic chain, and that's specifically organizational, and it's an interesting one to cover. So let's look at that
Okay,
next
that's great.
time.
So,
Good.
thank you for that. And the next episode is 2 weeks ahead. So, we are talking about
Mm,
the
yeah.
25th, Monday, the 25th.
Yes.
Okay.
Lovely.
Okay.
Great.
So,
All
thank
right.
all right. So
Thanks,
thank you,
Sarah.
Marguerite. And today we took maybe 14 extra minutes. Thanks for all those who
Yeah.
are actually following us, and thanks to you for your real generosity and always the wisdom that you're sharing. So, and our next episode is on 25th. And we were talking about
Yeah.
the ego states and the symbiotic chain.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Jane.
Uh,
Lovely. Thank you.
October. So thank you and have a nice day, everyone. Bye bye.
Yes. Bye bye. Bye bye, everyone.